The most recent thing that I heard was Dr. Jason Fung, who I'm a huge fan of. I'm Canadian. He's a Canadian nephrologist, and I really respect him. And this guy is bucking a lot of these trends. He's really standing up to the traditional medical society and saying things that very few people are qualified or willing to say. And I was very disappointed. And Dave Asprey, he knows how important vitamin D is. And he let this guy talk. And he brought up this meta-analysis that was done. And it's one of the most stupid pieces of research I've ever seen in my entire life. And so they took all these studies. Now, when you do a meta-analysis, someone's choosing which studies to feature. So that's the first flaw in a meta-analysis, is that someone's making a choice which studies to include. The second part was that if you look at that meta-analysis and you really look at those studies, 50% of them never took a blood level. Imagine thinking about testosterone and just saying, oh yeah, I took a pill. If you don't measure the blood level, you have no clue as to what you're doing. And the majority of the studies are flawed because they were A, giving a dose that was way too low, not physiologic, and B, they were not giving it for enough time. And they're thinking that this is some sort of daily dose. Vitamin D is a level that you have to maintain in your body. And, I like to think of it as a reservoir. And once your reservoir is low, it doesn't matter how much you take, you got to raise your level and you need a blood test. So the idiocy around this is kind of shocking. And, this why I'm such a big proponent is that when I discovered what this vitamin D was, it's not a vitamin, it's a hormone, I was really angry because I suffered till the age of 48. I had never had a vitamin D test. No doctor ever mentioned it at any point in time. None of my gastroenterologists ever told me about it. And I suffered from Crohn's disease, and it was bad. It ruined my life. So the reason why I feature vitamin D so prominently is this is a major issue that was swept under the rug in the 1930s and 40s when another Canadian dentist by the name of Weston Price said, hey guys, this stuff is important. By observation, this dentist, he's saying, hey guys, this is really important. These vitamins and minerals are really critical. The fact that I didn't learn them in dental school, this is outrageous. The fact that it's still not taught today, it's a scandal to me. It doesn't really matter whether you get your vitamin D from food or sunlight. If you stay out of the sun, it's dangerous for a lot of different reasons. It's bad for you. So obviously, when possible, in the Northern Hemisphere, people who are living in the North, they can't get any vitamin D right now. The sun simply isn't high enough in the sky and strong enough to make vitamin D on you. That's the first thing. Now, the second thing is that this is a major missing element of all medicine. And the fact that you go to your doctor and first thing they ask you is, are you supplementing vitamin D? Let's get a level on you. You're not going to find anyone on this planet who gets their initial diagnosis of cancer and has a high vitamin D level. That doesn't happen. No one's checking people's vitamin D level. People are not supplementing. They think they're getting it from milk or from their multivitamin. And then as their vitamin D level runs down, their bodies start to literally fall apart.
Dr. Gould, how do we get in the sun when the sun, to help prevent cancer, when the sun itself causes cancer?
Well, the answer to that. The sun doesn't cause cancer. Inappropriate sun exposure can cause cancer. And when I say inappropriate, I mean too much or too little. The biggest and most common sense argument I have, where you can just take any scientific study and just shove it aside, is say melanoma. Everyone believes melanoma is caused by being in the sun too much. That on its surface is ridiculous. And if you look at any study, it's also completely unfounded. If melanoma were caused by excessive sun exposure, we'd see it on the tops of our ears, on our nose, on our head, and all the areas that are exposed. Those are the areas we get squamous cell carcinoma and basal cell carcinoma. So people are still freaking out. They hear carcinoma, squamous cell. This is all scary shit to people, as it should be. But the understanding that chronic sun exposure without maintaining a normal vitamin D level will result in cancer. Melanoma is caused by too little sun exposure, not too much. And that's just common sense. I don't need a single study to prove that. You can see it every day. So you could be in the sun and you could be taking vitamin D and now your vitamin D level is low. The reason is because of something called glyphosate. You've heard of glyphosate before. It's in Roundup. You can buy it at Home Depot or 7-Eleven. And what this stuff does, one of the components of what it does is it actually prevents the enzymes in your liver from activating the vitamin D that you take in into the 25-OHD form. That's the amount that your doctor measures. Oh, you're low. And you're thinking, well, I am taking vitamin D. Why is my level not high? Because glyphosate is destroying the enzymes, the CYP or CYP enzymes in the liver. That's your first step. You take in vitamin D from sunlight or from supplements, it goes to your liver to get activated, hydroxylated, and it becomes a 25-OH vitamin D. That's the storage form that should be everywhere in your body. Now you have to activate that again to make it active, and the enzymes that do this are being destroyed by what's in all of the industrial foods that most people are eating. Sure, so there's vitamin D3 and vitamin D2. Vitamin D2 is the plant vitamin D. There's no point in checking it, although some doctors do. We don't care about that. Vitamin D3 is the human or animal version. It's the only one that you can buy. In the past, and still to this day, when you go to your doctor, if they actually do a vitamin D test and they tell you you're low, they will give you a prescription for 50,000 IU of vitamin D2. And this sounds like it's going to solve all your problems because that's a massive dose. And you take it they usually give it to you for a couple of weeks and then they're done. And they're not thinking, first of all, vitamin D2 is not as effective as vitamin D. It'll work on the receptor, but it's not as effective. It doesn't last as long. The second thing is what led you to have a vitamin D deficiency in the first place. Nothing's changed unless you change your lifestyle, change your diet, change your habits. So it's a complex question, and you need to think of it this way. There's different ways to raise your vitamin D level. So most people will be taking a dose like 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. Doctors tell patients they cannot take more than 4,000 international units. That's the maximum, which is nonsense. It's absolute garbage. There is no one-time toxic dose for vitamin D. I just posted a video today on Instagram about what you do if you get COVID and you have not been supplementing at least 5,000 IU of vitamin D for at least 3 months. If you haven't been doing that, you're low, especially because it's the middle of winter. Tell your doctor that you take 10,000 IU of vitamin D and you're going to see their reaction. They go, that's toxic. Like, just on cue every time, which is ridiculous. You can make 20,000 IU of vitamin D by going in the sun for 20 minutes or a half an hour. That is a physiologic amount. That's the amount Mother Nature wanted you to make. Now, the thing is with sunlight, once you make the right amount of vitamin D, you're not going to be making more. There's sort of a maximum. You're going to top out at 100, and that's the level I've achieved just by sun tanning. But when you take supplements, you can go too high. And do not worry, if someone has one single study to show me the toxic effects of vitamin D, send it on over. Those studies don't exist. Vitamin D is a transcriptional agent. And what that means is it goes to your DNA and it tells your DNA which genes to copy. And if you don't have enough vitamin D, your body has to choose, which genes am I going to copy? There's not enough vitamin D to make everything. So I'm going to stick to my calcium absorption because if I don't have calcium, I'm going to die. So I got to the point where I was so frustrated looking at these studies, and all of these doctors, it didn't matter what type of medical practice it was. These doctors would put together a study, and it didn't matter what disease it was. They would give people vitamin D, and they'd be all shocked. They go, wow, this vitamin D really worked. We should do further investigation. I'd be like, if you don't understand that everyone is walking around deficient, you're looking at a broken system, and every time you give somebody who's sick vitamin D, they get better. This is not a miracle drug. This is the understanding that everyone's low, and when you give people vitamin D, their health improves to a point. Now, the sicker you are, the more vitamin D will change your life. In my case, I want you to understand that, I wasn't looking for any of the stuff that I found. What happened to me was I was not feeling good. I was on anxiety and depression medication, but there wasn't a lot wrong in my life. I was clenching and grinding my teeth all the time. And when I was asleep, I'd wake up with a really sore neck and I didn't feel good. I didn't feel right. I would lose my cool and start screaming at everyone. And by accident, I found out I had sleep apnea. And then I found my current guru, Dr. Stasha Gomanak, who said sleep apnea is a vitamin D deficiency. And I didn't know what that meant. So I started to investigate. And as I raised my vitamin D level, within 2 weeks of taking vitamin D, I stopped clenching my teeth. Everyone thinks clenching and grinding is caused by stress. Well, kids grind their teeth. 2, 3, 4-year-olds grind their teeth in sleep. What are they stressed about? When you give a child who snores or grinds their teeth vitamin D, they'll stop grinding in 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. Now, I don't need a single study to tell me that this is really important. What's happening is vitamin D deficiency, when it gets to a certain point, you don't have enough in your brain. Sleep apnea, bruxism, all these things, these are neurological conditions. Everybody wants to blame sleep apnea on a fat neck. This is your fault. You don't care about yourself. You're a bad person. And now the punishment of sleep apnea is ridiculous. And this is cruel. I had a patient in today who said, I have sleep apnea, but I didn't want to do anything. And I thought, okay, he doesn't want a CPAP. And I can't blame you. Who wants that crap? But I said, well, tell me why not? And he said, well, they wanted to do surgery. And I said, okay. So they want to do a $40,000 surgery to open and widen my jaw. And I said, let me ask you this. The guy's about 72. Let me ask you this. Did you sleep normally for most of your life? And he said, yep. And I said, okay, what do you think changed? What structure changed in your jaw? Nothing. This is a really big deal. I have been trying to get my profession to understand this is a neurological issue, not a structural issue. And children are being mutilated. That's why I'm so thrilled to be on your podcast. I know lots of people who listen to your podcast have kids. This is so important. The easiest thing in the world you can do, and you can change the trajectory of your child's life immediately by doing the simplest thing. And just, any other questions with dosing that, I'm happy to answer them all. It's complex. Rule of thumb to anyone listening, it's 1,000 international units per 25 pounds. So that's simple. You got a 50-pound kid, you're going to give them 2,000 IU of vitamin D. That's a maintenance dose. If they're low, you want to give them a loading dose to raise their level. So what's the big deal about vitamin D? Why is this one thing so all-encompassing? And the reason is that because when this one particular thing, and when you have enough of it, your DNA is able to copy any genes that it wants. And the primary thing that vitamin D does is it regulates the gut microbiome. And of course, this makes sense because in the old days when we were hunter-gatherers and your vitamin D level was low, it was winter, and you would be healthier with a different gut microbiome. Now, in the summer, when the D level is high, there's two different ways that vitamin D will actually regulate the gut microbiome, but you're never going to maintain the right microbiome without an evolutionary level of vitamin D. And I want my level always above 50. I never want it to go low. I really don't. And it'll drop quickly, especially if you have sleep apnea and you're not supplementing a high dose. So the answer to that question is the actual microbiome on your skin is regulated by vitamin D. Vitamin D allows you to create something called antimicrobial cafecidins. And these are little proteins that actually will dictate the type, variety of bacteria and everything on you. This is why COVID is so affected by vitamin D, is those are antiviral, antibacterial proteins. You make them in your lungs, you make them in your nose, you make them on your skin, you make them in your gut. And these will dictate your microbes. When I raised my vitamin D level, my body odor changed. I had a completely different set of microbes. First of all, staying out of the sun is dangerous. It's the dumbest thing ever. But you can't just go in the sun and fry yourself. So to anyone listening, don't drop everything and run outside, because I do get that. Patients come in sunburned and say, well, what happened? Well, I wanted vitamin D. And I like to use this analogy. So when you start to work out, you don't go to the gym on your first day and bench press 300 pounds. You got to build up slowly. You have to learn, what do I do? Do I eat this? Do I hydrate? All these different things that you learn around fitness. This needs to be applied to the sun. And it wouldn't be needed if we all still lived outdoors. It wouldn't make a difference. You'd be eating natural whole foods. You'd be eating the animals that you kill or the seafood that you catch. You'd be outside in the spring. And as the days got longer, your tan would get darker. And this would be irrelevant. Here we are, we're living in these little boxes that are really cages. And we think this is normal. This is not our natural habitat. And that's the problem. It's not just vitamin D, it's all these other elements that we've literally cut ourselves off from, thinking that we're different, we're civilized. That's why my book is called The Modern Epidemic. It's literally the disease of modern living caused by a separation of the human animal from its natural habitat. It's not that vitamin D is stored in fat. It's just that it will diffuse everywhere around your body. And if you're fat, you've got to take a lot more vitamin D to fill up that level. So, and it's really tragic too, because when I used to go to the gym in the old days, I'd see these heavy people, and I was a bigger guy most of my life, and it breaks my heart. These people are trying. They're trying to work out. They're trying to eat right. They've been given all the wrong instructions. And when you go to the gym and work out, if your vitamin D level is low, your body's in survival mode, and it's not going to burn your fat at all because you don't have the right machinery, because you don't have enough vitamin D. You need to have an evolutionary level of vitamin D to be able to be functioning and normal. The gut microbiome is the most important thing in your entire body. The DNA of the microbes in you outnumbers ours like 99%. So we have this little bit of DNA that we inherited, but we utilize all these microbes. So having the right gut microbiome is critical to health and life. So the root cause of sleep apnea, it's the root cause of every single modern disease. And this is complex stuff. And just swallowing a bunch of probiotics is not going to solve the problem. You know that sauna therapy is good for you. You know the infrared light is good for you. Why? These are all things that all come together in the mitochondria because it's the most important part of your body. Everything else is irrelevant. You could have the fanciest house and have all this great technology. When the power gets cut, you're screwed. It is, I consider it like a fuel. We need air to breathe. We need food to eat. We need water to drink. And we need sunlight. And the part of the sunlight we need is the component of vitamin D. Again, it's one of the things that sunlight makes in our body. So this is like a fuel in your body. This is another very serious discussion. And I want people to know, when you take your kids to the beach and you take out that spray and you spray them like you're coating them, that is not protecting them. That is bad news. So that's nanoparticles. You need to think of that. I think it's 60% of everything you put on your skin gets absorbed. If you wouldn't eat it and put it in your mouth, don't put it on your skin. Don't do it. So then what does that mean about sunscreen? Well, sunscreen is dangerous because it gives you a false sense of security and safety. And this is the real truth. So when you go in the sun, there's two types of radiation that we're interested in, UVA and UVB. Now, UVB radiation does three things. It creates vitamin D, it causes a sunburn, and it gives you a tan. Those are its primary duties. And of course, this makes sense because UVB radiation is only available when the sun is just high enough in the sky to break through and to strike your skin. Now, UVA radiation penetrates deeply. It goes into the dermis, subdermis goes into your fat. And that UVA radiation is only partially blocked by sunscreen. So people are putting on sunscreen, they're blocking all their vitamin D production. They're getting the sun's damage. Their body thinks it's winter. It's terrifying. And I've already had one squamous cell carcinoma removed from my nose. I wore sunscreen my whole life. And the reason is because I never had a healthy vitamin D level. And then when you put this stuff on, so now your burn system is blocked. When you get a burn, that's your signal to get out of the sun. Too much sun. Hunter-gatherers were not stupid. If it was hot and they were getting, they'd get out of the sun. Now you spray yourself with this toxic crap, these nanoparticles that get into everything. And then you don't even know, your body's like, oh, it's cool. And you're frying yourself. So you're getting all this UVA radiation. You don't have that warning sign. And then I won't even go in hotel pools because they're spraying that shit everywhere. And it's nanoparticles. They're not natural.